how do you guys feel about still being on the legislative action network?
I'm fine, I enjoy that.
I would like so.
Oh, great. Yeah, and I think that unless, what about you, or do you want to take it?
No, I'm good. Take it, you're off.
All right.
Okay. Okay, so then we have final clerk as secretary. We have DMUSD as North Coastal Consortium, Special Education Rep. We have North City West, still Doug Raffner. We continue to rotate for the DMSCF. And then Catherine and Scott stand as representatives for the local legislative action network. Okay, so is there a motion to appoint the selected representatives to the 2023 school year?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion is passed. Okay, 1.6, adoption of dates, times, and locations of the 2023 regular board of trustees meeting. Any questions and comments on the dates? Okay. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll move to approve the dates.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, the motion is passed. Oh, any opposed? Okay, so 1.7 is the adjournment of the organizational meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn the organizational meeting?
I'll move to adjourn the organization meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Organizational meeting is adjourned at 4:48 p.m. Okay, so now we are going to call to order the Governing Board of Trustees regular meeting. Open session at the December 14th, 2022 Governing Board of Trustees meeting is called to order at 4:48 p.m. 1.9 is public input concerning items in the closed session agenda. The Manalco members of the public are requested to address the governing board regarding items that are on the closed session agenda. Is there any public input? There is none. Okay, so item 1.10, adjournment into closed session. The board will meet in closed session to consider the following matters. 2.1, conference with labor negotiator. Government Code Section 54957.6, agency designated representatives. One matter as is identified on the agenda. 2.2, conference with labor negotiator. Government Code Section 54957.6, unrepresented employee. One matter as is identified on the agenda. 2.3, conference with labor negotiator. Government Code Section 54957.6, unrepresented employee. One matter as identified on the agenda. 2.4, conference with labor negotiator. Government Code Section 54957.6, unrepresented employee. One matter as is identified on the agenda, and conference with labor negotiator. Government Code Section 54957.6, unrepresented employee. One matter as is identified on the agenda. 2.6, conference with legal counsel pending litigation. Government Code Section 54956.9 D1. One matter as is identified on the agenda. 2.7, conference with legal counsel pending litigation. Government Code Section 54956.9 D1. One matter as is identified on the agenda. The board will now adjourn into closed session at 4:50 p.m.
While you're there.
All right, this is interesting, different perspective for me here. We are back, we're reconvening open session at 5:59 p.m. Apologies for a little bit of delay because I'm new, so I wasn't able to get these guys on the track as quickly as possible. By law and board policy, I must notify you this meeting is being recorded. By law and board policy, any member of the public may address the board on any item on the agenda or any non-agenda item, but the public must present a written request to the board. Therefore, I ask you to kindly submit your speaker slips at this time to help us run an efficient meeting. Speaker slips or non-agenda items need to be turned in prior to item 4.2, hearing of the public regarding non-agenda items. You'll be recognized and called to the podium at that time. You will have 3 minutes to address the governing board. For those individuals who wish to comment on a particular agenda item, your speaker slip will be turned in by item 5.6, hearing of the public regarding agenda items. You'll be recognized and called to the podium when your requested agenda item comes up. You will have 3 minutes to address the governing board. And report of action, 3.2, report of action taken in closed session. Governing board met in closed session and no action was taken. 3.3, pledge of allegiance. We'll now welcome the clerk to lead us in pledge of allegiance.
Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, 3.4 is approval agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll motion for the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Motion approved, the agenda is passed. 4.1, correspondence. Nothing further.
Good evening. The superintendent's office has not received correspondence on district-related topics this month. Thank you.
4.2, hearing of the public regarding non-agenda items. We'll now call members of the public who have requested to address the governing board regarding items that are not on the agenda. Members of the public who would like to address the governing board regarding a non-agenda item must complete and submit a speaker slip at this time. Is there any public input concerning non-agenda items? Nope. Then we'll move on to number 5. 5.1, board report, Mar Hills Teachers Association with Kevin Cunha. All right, change seats here, right?
So you see President Trump in members of the board. All right, let's just say this. Members of the board, Dr. Clerk, Cabinet, thank you for having me here, and good evening. So, because I was not actually up here last time in the November meeting and speaking officially, I'd like to start by officially saying congratulations to Catherine and Doug and Scott on your re-election. I myself and the teachers at Delmar appreciate the great amount of time and effort that you and the rest of the board put into serving the community of Delmar. I also appreciate your support of our teachers as they endeavor towards a common goal, providing the best educational experience possible for our students and their families. I'd also like to take a minute to voice my appreciation for the other folks sitting at the table across from me. As the president of our Teachers Association, my perspective has broadened over time. As I've worked with Dr. McClurk and the rest of her staff, in a way that most teachers don't have the opportunity to experience, I recognize that you all have difficult jobs. And you face pressures and stress that aren't always on display for all to see. So, when I come to the table, whether it's in a text, a phone call, a monthly meeting, professional relations, or bargaining, or even here at board meeting, I try to consider what it takes to walk in your shoes and appreciate the weight that you carry. Now there's one more group, and it would be very remiss of me to not include them in my comments. Of course, I'm talking about our teachers. They too face pressures and stress that aren't always on display for all to see, but they walk in very different shoes, figuratively speaking. Okay, let's rip the teacher. Having been a sailor in past life, I might say that if you were the captain, we are the turbo prop that's turning the shaft. And much like the engines that can move giant aircraft carriers with proper maintenance and care, teachers can work at their full potential to move this ship at full speed ahead. They don't say that last part in movies. Seriously though, teachers are some of the most dedicated, caring, and selfless people I know, and I'm grateful to work alongside such individuals each and every day. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Kevin. We'll now move to 5.2, board report from the Delmar Schools Education Foundation. Will Reddits. I don't see it. And Next, we are at board reports of members. So we're gonna start at the end now with board member Hoffman.
Ooh, exciting, I get to go first.
He did.
I guess I'll just share that we went to the California School Boards Association conference this month, and all of us were there, so I don't have a lot to report out to you guys, but I guess just one thing that's, and a couple of things. One thing it's really nice to get to gather with, I think it's the largest gathering of elected officials in the country, 5,000 something elected officials gathering at the convention center, so that was something to see. But it's also, we had a chance to get together with some of the other community-funded districts. Schools for Sound Finance represents us in Sacramento, and I think that there's always education to do, for us and for the public about the difference in how we're funded and how other districts are funded. So if the vast majority of the sessions and topics, a lot of things didn't relate to us because we get our funding from property taxes. Whereas other districts get, 90% of the districts get their funding allocated by Sacramento on a per pupil basis. So there are some real differences, and so I think some of those differences will be illuminated, as we get into potentially a downturn, inflation issues, and there are just different factors that affect our district and there's a lot of beaches in other districts, and other districts around here are in the same community-funded situation. But it's just something to keep an eye on and be aware of as we go forward. So, thanks.
And I hope you're getting my good side, because I've moved, so now I look at Chris all night. I too went to CSBA. I appreciate going to that. This year I came back with something that struck me. There was a presentation on civics, and it really struck me as upsetting a little bit. They said that 20% of the people in this country cannot name or cite a branch of the federal government, and that really troubled me. And so on the panel was the presiding justice from the appellate court down here in San Diego, and she, and along with the entire judicial system, have a program in place for all these schools to start learning civics beginning in kindergarten, bringing it up into high school and whatnot. And I think it's extremely important, as I think everybody would agree, to learn how to be a good citizen. And learning that at the earliest stage, I think, would be extremely helpful. I remember myself, I had the benefit of Schoolhouse Rock when I was growing up. So I know.
Still online.
Is it still online? Okay. But I mean, I know what it is to be a bill, and the preamble to the Constitution I can recite to you simply because of that. I don't know if kids these days have that luxury, but we can present it to them. I do recall I made a site visit, Scott and I made a site visit to one class at Mar Hills where the teacher was teaching about the 3 branches of government, and they didn't even realize they were learning about it because she presented it in such a way that she said, let me tell you about something that happened to me this weekend. And she was telling a story, and everybody was enthralled with it. Let it be known that they were learning about the 3 branches of government, they didn't even know it. And at the end of the conversation, they realized what she was doing. So I think there are some programs, and I would encourage our district to get involved in those programs, especially one where we can invite a judge from the courts to come and speak to our classes and teach our kids about the court system and the judicial system. I think it's important. I also chair the North City West Facilities Financing Authority, and we had a meeting, I think it was right before the CSBA meeting, I think it was a couple days before, and I'm happy to report that we're bringing back a check for about $765,000 in cost overruns from the construction of some of the schools. Way back in the day, it took us a long time to get that money loosened up from them, but we were able to bring that back, and I think there's still remaining about $200,000 left that we'll get from those cost overruns. But this year we got about $750,000, $760,000? I don't have the number clear in my head, but it's certainly nice to get that money back. Also at the CSBA meeting, we met with our neighboring districts, all the school boards from the neighboring districts, and I think it's extremely helpful. We, the feeder districts, are feeding into the San Diego district, and it's nice to get a good perspective of what they're doing, what problems they're having, and then we look at the high school district and say, we're churning them out in good shape, and it's up to you to bring them home. So to see the people that are doing that was really helpful. I want to congratulate Jiwa and Catherine for their new positions, and in doing that I get to see personal rights. So, anyway, thank you all. Merry Christmas to everybody, and let's look forward to a real happy new year.
Thank you, Doug. My report, I usually just have little notes that I scribble down and I just wing it, but I actually have prepared something today, just from stuff I've heard at the conference. But I want to start, I saw this just a few hours ago. California's landmark environmental law finally comes to the legislature itself. Golden State lawmakers have refused to fix the California CEQA. And it could cost them their brand new office building. And because they are getting sued by Save Our Capital, not to be confused with Save Our Fields. And it will help them fix CEQA. So it was an interesting article if anyone wants to read it. And I want to start and say that I do thank everybody who supported me during the past election. I'm honored and humbled that you give me another 4 years on this board. As I've always said, I will base my decisions here on what's best for the students, with everyone having an equal opportunity to succeed. And I encourage all of you parents out there taking an active role in your child's education. After all, raising the kids is your responsibility and not ours. We only done them for we have them on loan for the day, I guess. But with that said, the California School Board Association was 2 weeks ago here in San Diego, and you've already heard a couple board members talk about it. It's a conference I really look forward to every year. We connect with other board members across the state and administrators, and we get a feel for the issues that are affecting us in the nation, in California, and locally here in San Diego County. We were able to meet, as Doug mentioned, for lunch with some of with San Diego board members, not all of them, but some of them, and those from the other feeder elementary school districts to make some connections. And there are a lot of new board members. I think it's always important to actually sit down and put a name to a face, actually have a conversation with people, get to know them, because that's what makes these boards more cohesive. I think we have a wonderful board here because we've gotten to know each other, and we come from a wide variety of political and opinions, a lot of backgrounds, different backgrounds, but we're here to do what's best for the kids. And I think learning your other board members can really help. As I said, I come away feeling fortunate that we are from Del Mar. We are an example of what quality education should be here and what it should look like. Our academics are second to none. California's the Golden State, but unfortunately it's tarnished in education. And there's been a lot of money thrown at it from Sacramento, but it hasn't seemed to help yet. And while Del Mar's educational excellence has continued to shine, it's not been that way with the rest of the state, as test scores have declined during the COVID shutdowns. But I'm very pleased with where we are on the academic side. As I returned from the conference, I kept remembering something from the opening of the first general session, and none of the other board members were sitting with me at the time, but normally the general session is in the midday. We've already had our morning sessions, breakout sessions, trade shows up, we've had lunch, and come back and we sit down. We usually end up a little bit late coming back from lunch and don't hear all the opening remarks. But here it was nice to see that you had the presentation of arms, and the high school students present the flags, and we had the Pledge of Allegiance just as we do here and start our meetings, and they started the conference that way. And as we finished, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. there's just a group of board members behind me just added in a little snarky voice eventually. And I had to pause, and then they muttered, that's why we don't say the pledge in our district. And again, I just kind of had to pause, and it's remained with me since then, and I've reflected on that a lot. I'm just hoping that's not what we're teaching in our children. We're not a terrible country, we're a wonderful country. While no nation is perfect, I challenge those board members to name another country that has taken more strides than ours. We take each day to better ourselves in this great nation. We are a giant melting pot. We take the best of all cultures and make it our own. You know, I long for the day in which we identify ourselves on those little check boxes as other and white out American. But as educators, we must teach history as it was, not erase it. People stream here because of our country's values, our individual freedom, the ability of all to make it in life. And for those who work hard and study in school, the possibilities are endless. Education is the great equalizer, and that is what we teach, and we should teach here in Del Mar. We in this district give everyone an equal opportunity to succeed, no matter what their lot in life, and I know all the other board members will agree with that. As they say, the best way to stop discriminating against race and culture is to stop discriminating against race and culture. And those who don't learn from the past will wind up repeating it. Too many times, school districts are not focused on the skills that matter most. It's not just the academics that Del Mar can showcase as our test scores, but rather the other skill sets like critical thinking, questioning the dogma, calling out inconsistencies and hypocrisy around you, and not only respecting, but encouraging the differences of opinion. I know it's hard as the faceless social media has made the lack of respect a problem, and solving the symptom by throttling the opinion of others makes the problem worse. But with that said, as we move forward with our strategic plan, let's ask ourselves, how can we do these skills better? We as educators need to teach the kids to solve problems and not symptoms. Solving symptoms in society make you feel good that you've done something, but the problem persists, gets worse, or even festers. We have seen so much of that here in San Diego and California, solving the symptoms but not the problems. And what have been the big issues this year? Many of them have been persistent. Mental health, drug use, high crime, immigration, inflation, high gas and electricity prices, the cost of living, cost of housing, homelessness. My son had to do a homelessness project for school this fall. He said to me, do you know how much of the homelessness is due to mental health and drug use? And he said, a lot. I said, yeah, it's true. And he said, we need to get them help. And I said, yes, that's solving the problem and not the symptom. And perhaps he could teach our leaders something on this. An example of the project of Del Mar Schools and how we teach our children to critically think. So I also attended the legislative action meeting. It's a roundtable discussion between us school boards in North County and legislators about the priorities for the new year. And we had 3 priorities that we told the legislators we'd like to see them addressed in Sacramento. One was to maintain commitment to local control, prioritize the control, streamline the accountability and reporting systems. Our cabinet here has not just the LCAP to fill out, but a whole bunch of other forms, and every time Sacramento comes in with another program, there's a whole new set of forms. And what we are asking our legislators out in Sacramento to do is to consolidate that, so one form that we can just fill out in the LCAP and have our accountability done that way. The second was creating long-term fiscal stability, having the state add nothing to the education budget that would require schools to add more staff. And we already are having trouble recruiting and retaining high-quality educators, and that if you're requiring us to hire more, it's straining us financially and physically. The last one was maintaining the commitment to and to addressing the issues with special education funding, increasing and equalizing the funding, increasing the base rate, providing the same COLA to special education funding as the LCFF. And I know Legislator Levin's group was very concerned about this, and I think he's going to address that or talk to us more about special education needs and making sure that the federal government lives up to their responsibility to fully fund special education. The members that were there gave other priorities as well. I guess I'll add Mainshine, Atkins, and Jones's staff were not present. Hobarth's office mentioned about priority of bike safety, which I know is important, especially all our kids bike to school, and especially with the e-bikes around there, and that's an important thing that the legislature might address. Congressman Peters' office, I'm glad they were there, but they were just listening and learning at that point, didn't really give us any priorities. The one person I was a little disappointed with was our new Senator Blake Spears' priorities. Her main priority was mass transit, giving students bus passes to get to school. Now, it's a great idea, but again, I think she's solving symptoms and not problems. The other priorities were not really addressing things that we would have to school. So I'd like to be able to get, sit down and talk with her and her staff, and so we can learn about what we are thinking on both sides and get a feel for this, just like we do here in the board. So my end point with all this, we are embarking on our strategic plan. Let's look at the past. Let's identify the weak links, as we, like our country, are not perfect, but we strive to continually learn and improve. Let's find our problems. Let's solve the problem and not the symptoms. We're a wonderful district. We're going to get better. We're going to get much better. And I'll end, our 9 schools are already, the candle shining in our country, the flashlight directing our state, the lighthouse for our country, and the beacon of our world, and our students change that world. Thank you. That's my report.
I will try to follow up with that. Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm excited to be the new clerk, and well, congratulations. I just want to thank everyone who came out and voted. That's part of your civic duty and responsibility is to vote, and I know that some of our elementary schools, at least at my kids' elementary school, they've had some elections, so I think that's a great way to get kids involved in voting early and understand the process. Let's see, I also want to thank the DMCTA for endorsing my campaign. I really appreciate it as a fellow educator. I'm humbled and honored to be amongst you and helping to represent you. I also attended the CSBA Annual Education Conference, and some of the highlights for me were attending sessions specifically related to student health and wellness, which I think, due to the funding that the state is providing, has really, really helped school districts provide more robust services in-house for student health and wellness. And as an example, we have, I don't know the exact number of school counselors we've got right now, but I think that the work that they're doing is tremendous. And honestly, if we could get one at every single site, that would be amazing. And I think it's just as important as all the core subjects that we're teaching, because I think someone said it goes Maslow before Bloom. So if our students are feeling confident and able to be focused in the classroom, then they're going to retain the information that the teachers are imparting. So that was a great opportunity to attend that conference. I want to thank you, Holly, for providing that to us. Let's see. I also became aware of an opportunity. I think that this aligns really well with our strategic plan and something that the teachers have been asking for such a long time now, to partner with the UCSD Department of Education Studies. They work with a neighboring district. They have for, like over 10 years now, conducting surveys of students, staff, and families, and kind of tracking along with them and following like a cohort, and I think that could be an excellent partnership. I'm all for partnering with our amazing industries and schools that are right here in our own backyard. So I think that's something I have mentioned to Dr. McClurg, and I'm eager to hear what she finds out about that. And let's see. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin. So I'm the new president here, and that's I guess my newest thing that happened this month. I didn't get a chance to say this earlier, but I thank you all for your confidence in me, and I appreciate the votes for that. And thank you, Erica, for your years of leadership. I think it was a solid 4 years. Like, as long as I've been here, you've been our leader, and I appreciate all the work that you've done, and you have big shoes to fill, and hopefully I will do it with justice. But I do want to say that this group is a really great group. We work so well together. Like Scott said, we have very different points of view, yet we respect one another. We value each other's opinions, and we want to hear each other's voices and respect them. So it's not a given that that's what happens at every school board. It's quite a rarity, actually, I think. The more I get involved, the more I see from other districts. So I'm very pleased to be working with you all here, and I hope to continue to run efficient and effective meetings. So, in terms of what we did this last month, a lot of you guys already mentioned it. Went to the school board meetings, California School Board meeting, School Board Association conference, annual conference, and the one thing I kind of would echo what Scott was saying is that every time I go to these meetings, the one thing I really take away is that we are a really healthy district. And it's not to, I don't know if anybody else, but it's just you see all the issues that come up, and kind of like Eric is saying, a lot of them do not apply to us. They'll kind of talk about the main issues that these places need to deal with, these other school districts need to deal with, and the crises that they're encountering. We don't have those, we avoid them. And I think that that's not by chance. We have good leadership here, we have good administrators, we have good people working here. And so this is, it's something that's not said often enough, because I mean, we hear a lot from the negatives, but this is a really healthy district right now. And, so I'm very thankful to be in this situation. We are financially very stable. You look at some other districts, that's a lot of discussions, like where finances are coming from. We don't have those issues here. We have great academics, as was evidenced by our scores, and also just the design thinking, all the critical thinking that you were talking about, Scott. So, and like you said, there's always room for improvement, and so with an eye towards continually improving, that I think that's we as a community, we set high expectations here, and we as a board also echo those expectations. So we aim for exceptional, and we don't settle for anything less than that. I know that our administrators understand that. So I just want to take that time to kind of acknowledge that the work that we're doing here we're doing really well. But we can still do better, and we keep working for better. So I think that is all for me, and we'll move on to 5.5, the superintendent's report.
Good evening again, and I will echo thank you to former President Halpern, who has been really a fantastic board president for the last 4 years over some very complex issues, and very thoughtful and intentional in every move, and always looking out for how things can be handled in a way that is best for everyone. So thank you for your leadership and working so well and helping to create what we've got here. You're right, it's not an accident. It's very intentional and very much well thought out by all of our board members. Congratulations again to Doug, Scott, Catherine on being elected to another term. Congratulations to Jiwa as the president, Catherine clerk. We're excited about the coming year. Lots ahead. Very briefly, I will touch on the fact that, again, appreciate the time that Kevin, you spend with us and with Ryan about continually communicating what our teachers need and our certificated staff needs to be successful and bring their best to school every day. And also working alongside our PTA presidents, DMSCF, it's of course continues to be very important to the work that we do. And throughout the past couple of months, it's been full of focus group meetings and chances to meet with almost every single employee in the district now, and I'll have a chance to talk about that when I give an update about strategic planning in a little bit. I will tell you it's been great to have that opportunity to hear from everyone in the district, and then also parents as well. So it's just really, really nice to be face-to-face with people. And I want to wish all of our families and staff a happy holiday season and a wonderful new year. We look forward to seeing everybody back in 2023. And the last thing is actually a wonderful thing. We are thrilled tonight to have our soon-to-be Director of Child Nutrition Services here, Jamie Phillips is here, and Ryan Stanley, our Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources, is going to introduce Jamie to us. We're so excited. And Jamie has his family here, which is amazing.
It's fantastic. And President Mock, members of the board, and Dr. McClurk, Chris has been spending the last couple of years updating us on our new district-wide kitchen and the progress of our facilities in getting built. And so today is my honor to be able to introduce to you Mr. Jamie Phillips, who is going to be spearheading and supporting the district's nutritional services program for all of our students. So Jamie comes to us, and he has been serving as a director of child nutrition services since 2014, where he's worked in Upland and then most recently in Vista, where he's been able to lead their child nutrition service program to be recognized at the state and national level. And so it was very abundant after going through the rigorous process of making sure that we were able to bring in the absolute best, going through the interview process with Jamie. I'm so confident to know that he brings the passion, the knowledge, the expertise to help us build a fantastic program for our kids. So congratulations to Jamie. Thank you to his family for accompanying him and sharing him with us. So we're very pleased to be able to recommend Jamie as our next Director of Child Nutrition Services.
Thank you very much. Members of the board, Dr. McClurk, Cabinet, thank you very much for having me. I look forward to working on our program and building the nutrition program and bringing it back in-house and just seeing where we can just take it from here. I have a lot of ideas. Just can't wait to get out to the sites, meet all the principals, and just go from there. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, Jamie. Thank you for bringing your family, and thank you for bearing with us. I know you have a couple young ones there, and it's been a couple hours for you, but appreciate it. Thank you. So now we're in 5.6, hearing of the public regarding agenda items. For anyone who would like to address the governing board on a particular agenda item, your speaker slip will need to turn at this time. You'll be recognized and called to the podium. When your requested agenda item comes up, you have 3 minutes to address the governing board. 5.7 for approval of the meeting minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
One second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. Motion to approve the minutes from the November 16, 2022 meeting passed. Now to the consent agenda, 6.1 through 6.26. Are there any questions about anything on the consent agenda? I think I had a couple of questions that I wanted to ask. Let's see. I don't have that in my scripts. Okay. Can we go back to 5.8 then?
We'll come back to that.
Okay, we will come back to 5.8. We'll stick with the consent agenda items. And looking forward to questions. I had a quick question. 6.7, I think this is for Chris. It looks like it's regarding the meals. And it was just kind of, as I was kind of going through, I just had a quick question. It looks like the meal costs there's a certain price to them. I was just kind of curious, do we get reimbursed for that, or how much do we get reimbursed back for that?
Yes, we get reimbursed. So this gives the fiscal impact of the cost per meal. And I don't have the exact cost that we get reimbursed. We will be speaking to the amount of money that will be supporting the program. The purpose of this overall, though, is really, in essence, it's a new contract, but we're really extending the service with OKC so that we can move through the rest of the spring if we need to. But by doing it with a 60-day opt-out, it really, in essence, allows us to, if we get to a point in the spring, we know that we'll be able to open it up on our own in the kitchen, then we can give them 60-day notice and be able to move out of the program. So this, Tiana Barton helped to negotiate this so that we'd be able to have the service, but also be able to opt out of the service should we be ready to open the kitchen.
Yeah, Thank you, that totally makes a lot of sense to me. And then just one last question on 6.8. I was kind of curious, I looked at this and it looked interesting about the waste diversion program. I was wondering if you could tell me a little bit more about it.
Absolutely. So as we've been moving forward with our Universal Meals program, we knew that there was a level of waste that comes with the amount of vended meals. And so the first step was to get it up and running, as you know, went from 15,000 meals a month to 15,000 meals a week. But the next step was then to look at how can we reduce waste, both in looking at recycling and pieces like that, but also reducing the waste of food and then taking care of that waste and taking care of it appropriately. So we are proposing to partner with a company, BCK Programs. They work with Encinitas and a number of other school districts around the county. We will be piloting with Ocean Air and developing a program with Ocean Air with their support, and then we would plan to roll that program out to all of our school sites. It will have a combination of waste diversion, as well as recycling and putting food waste into the right place so it can go and become compost, and then looking at reducing the amount that it goes into our landfill. So there will be a component of it that is about educating students and having students be a part of building the program, and a component of it that will be about reducing that waste and that footprint.
Yeah, it sounds like a wonderful idea, a wonderful program, and I'd love to see that up and running, like when you kind of get some more going on, just let us know how it goes.
Absolutely, we plan to bring it back and hopefully be able to bring something back where we can have some students who come speak to it as well.
That'd be fantastic, thank you. That's all the question I have, I don't think I have anything else. If not, then sorry.
I'm curious to know 6.17, what that conference is about.
That is a conference that our art specialists will attend, some of our art specialists, and it's about the TAB studios, the choice-based art studios that currently operate within our district.
Anything else?
6.19.
Hi, the Orton Gillingham training is for ed specialists to attend. Orton Gillingham is a phonological reading intervention program that is used by our ed specialists for students with IEPs.
Thank you.
That's it. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Item 6.1 to 6.26.
I'll move to approve the consent.
Is there a second?
Awesome, yes.
All those in favor? Aye. And all those opposed? Okay. And motion approved, the consent agenda pass. And now we are at 7.1, which is Board Report of the California School Dashboard with Vivian Hartley, Coordinator of Assessment Data and Integrated Technology.
Good evening. It is my pleasure to share information about the California School Dashboard. The California School Dashboard is a communication tool for the state school accountability system. The California Department of Education has shared that this year's dashboard will be released publicly in mid-December. Not yet, though. And we haven't been given a specific date as to when it will be released. So at this point tonight, I'm going to be sharing information about how the dashboard will be looking a little bit different this year, as the state is restarting the accountability system after a 2-year pause. The dashboard provides performance information for 5 local indicators. Those I shared with you in June. Tonight, our focus will be on the state indicators. In contrast to the local indicators, where performance levels are locally determined, the state indicator performance levels are based on data collected by the state. Of the 6 state indicators, 4 apply to elementary school districts like ours. Those include academic indicators for English language arts and math, English learner progress, chronic absenteeism, and suspension rates. The college and career and also graduation rates are reported in secondary districts with high school students, so you won't see those on our dashboard. Local indicators and state indicators have different performance levels. The performance levels for local indicators are standard met or standard not met. The performance levels for the state indicators are organized or categorized by color, and the colors are ranked highest to lowest, with blue being the highest and red the lowest. And just as a reminder, the state has established green as the target objective for school districts. Performance levels are determined by comparing 2 years of data. The status is the current year's performance, and the change is determined once we have a second year of data. The status from the first year and the change from that status determine the second year of data, are both plotted on a 5x5 grid to establish the color for the indicator. Colors are determined for overall performance and also for student groups that have at least 30 students in both the current year and also the prior year. This year, the only status will be determined based on last year's academic information and also information or data related to absenteeism and suspension rates. And since we only have that 1 year of data, only status will be reported on the dashboard. And status will be reported this year by these cell phone-like bars and graphics that are purple. So we won't see colors that you see on the bottom of that slide. Instead, we're going to see those purple cell phone bars related to the performance levels. We will see the colors returning in the fall of 2023 when we have 2 years worth of data to look at. So last year's data and this year's data. I thought it might be helpful for us to revisit a little bit of the information that we shared last time around how we really focus in on students that may not be meeting expectation. As we shared in November, our Smarter Balance results continue to demonstrate that our students are performing at high levels. But that said, we are always thinking about what more we can do to support all of our students at all of the performance levels, including those that require academic support. Supporting all students in meeting academic standards has always been a focus in our district. As we think about helping all students meet high expectations, our focus begins with ensuring students are receiving high-quality instruction from teachers who have a clear understanding of learning goals and of the strategies necessary to support students with different needs. Every school has a safety net process to monitor and identify students who require support. They know which students are not meeting expectations and continue to monitor their progress via regular assessment. That includes formative assessment that's occurring in the classroom and also regular benchmark assessments that we give throughout the school year. Smarter Balance data provides us information about student performance from the prior year. So it's really critical that we have current assessment information to review so that we can determine what is their need at this moment in time. That's especially true for students in kindergarten through third grade because they don't take Smarter Balance information. So we ensure that we have that current information to know what their needs might be. Students are provided intervention based on assessed need. That might be intervention provided by classroom teacher, a grade level team might coordinate or organize themselves to provide intervention across a grade level. More recently, as you know, we've added intervention teachers, specifically in the area of reading. These teachers are supporting students who have assessed need in the area of foundational skills. So phonemic awareness and phonics for students that are below grade level. The work of these teachers is very intentional. It starts with diagnostic assessments to determine what are the specific gaps that these students have in their understanding of these important reading skills. From there, student groups are formed and intervention is provided for specific duration, typically around 7 weeks. At the end of that session, we review progress monitoring data to determine students need continued support or if they're ready to exit from the program. And throughout the work, the information is being shared with classroom teachers so that they can make connections to learning that's happening in the classroom also. This is a visual of how we think about supporting students in our district. It's a component of the multi-tiered system of support. Some might know it also as response to intervention. The tiered model addresses both academic need and social, emotional, and behavioral needs. Tier 1 is focused on all students receiving that high-quality instruction to support academic learning, social, emotional development, and also behavioral needs. Ongoing and screening progress monitoring allows for proactive intentional differentiation and the use of environmental supports in the classroom. Tier 2 is focused on students who have gaps in their learning that cause them to be below grade level in some areas. Intervention that is at this tier is in addition to the support that is occurring during core instruction in that tier 1 level. And then our tier 3 is focused on intensive intervention for students who are demonstrating the most need. Typically in our district, these are students who have an IEP and they are receiving support from their classroom teachers, but then also from special education staff. We're very fortunate in this district that we have actually relatively small numbers of students who need this additional support, and this really allows us to know the students, to know what their needs are, and to ensure that they're being provided with the support that they need. So with that, thank you. I look forward to sharing the specific dashboard data with you in January, assuming everything goes on schedule. I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.
All right. Thank you very much for your report.
Thank you.
And then we will move on to 8.1, which is a board recommendation to consider nominations for the Elkhorn School Board Association Delegate Assembly.
So the window is open, so if the board so chooses to nominate additional people to the delegate assembly, now would be the time for you to do that.
I'm
We're
currently
on
doing
Catherine and Jua on there.
Well, I'm still doing it, I mean, but it's, my term expires, the next one, so I'm not on this one right now, so. They're 2-year terms, yes, right.
So we look at this list and nominate people?
Well, that's the list of people that are, yeah, there are some new ones that are expiring. Now, so this question is really, does anybody else want to do it?
If we want to nominate somebody to go to run for this election for anybody whose term expires in 2023.
Yeah, so right now we have to nominate somebody to, the board, each individual district has to nominate people first, and then they are then put their names forward for election. So if anybody wants to be nominated, this is the time to do it. If not, it's totally fine too. Is anybody interested?
No, Jess? No, one's not. Do you want to do it? You were interested?
No, I was gonna go.
And it's totally fine if no one's interested, actually, like,
I don't know.
yeah.
It's not?
You have any interest in it? Scott looks more
I'll vote
interested.
for you.
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it one year, a few years ago, and I could do it, I certainly could do it at the time, so.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, let's see, do we need some sort of motion or anything to recommend Scott or nominate Scott?
Just nominate.
I nominate Scott.
I second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
And then we'll move on to 8.2, the board report on strategic planning process update with Delmer Clerk.
I will be giving an update on our process this evening, specific to timeline and what happens next after I briefly talk about what we've been doing thus far in our strategic planning process this year. So we'll be talking about, as you know, it's one of our priority actions. We'll talk about our process, the focus groups that we have had, and then going through the timeline of what happens next. This is the priority action. We've talked about it already. It's part of what we've defined as one of our priorities for this year. The board has maintained a commitment and worked alongside and with our district to have a collaborative process that's focused on creating this common understanding of what we want to achieve and what we need to do in order to meet our long-range goals and realize our vision. So this is that you can tell we've been very, very busy and very present with one another as we move through the process so far. We're in that first stage of preparation and planning, and you can see here that we've had meetings with almost every staff member in the district and most parent groups at this point regarding PTA, school site councils, and our ELACs at each of our schools. It's been great to get that input, and you can see here that we've got a couple of groups still left to meet with our nurses, health technicians, and some of our custodial staff. So we've been doing all of that this fall, and by the time we wrap up for winter break, should have almost all of those meetings, if not all of them, completed. Then moving into, as we look through the fall and the winter, and as we look to after our winter break and come back in January, the next part of what we're going to be doing is meeting with our community as far as parents and community and having planning input meetings at all of our school sites. So there will be a meeting at every school site. We plan for it to be early evening. We want to publicize that so that we can include not only parents, which we know will have parents interested in attending, but people who also don't have children in our schools would be welcome to attend those meetings as well. And if we look at our process, we are going to have an orientation meeting with Patel for Kids. A lot of this work right now is being, we're doing in coordination with Patel. That is the company, the consultation company that we have contracted with, although they're not personally here yet. They start to be personally present in January, and then really so in February. So we have a meeting with our leadership in January, and then we start to develop the portrait of a learner in February. And so it will be exciting to have many people involved throughout the process. February, March, then we will use that information that we've used throughout that process from our different community partners, stakeholders, teachers, of course, to survey based on what we know so far, based on what we want to know and move forward, use that survey time period to address the areas that have risen to the top as far as what's going to be part of our focus and priority moving forward, and then we actually articulate it into a plan that will drive our next several years, 3 to 5 years perhaps, and that writing of that plan will occur together collectively in April and May, and we expect to have board approval right after that. So, quick update on the timeline. I've been updating every month, so this is not a new process to any of you. It's important to know where we are, and we're getting a lot of really good information. I look forward to very soon being able to bring back what are some of the themes that are coming out, and how do we use the input that we're getting to actually inform next the portrait of a learner and involve many people throughout the next stage as well.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Do we have any questions?
Yeah. Couple questions. Thank you for presenting on this. Those dates that you showed on the last slide, are those the public meeting dates?
So these dates, not necessarily public meetings, but inclusive meetings that will be involving all stakeholders. So we still need to think through. Patel has so much experience in how to design these kinds of meetings so that we make sure that many people are involved. When we say public meetings, they definitely have experience in making sure that people who are attending these meetings are actually people who are within our community, who have a vested interest in doing what's best and right for children in our community. So public kind of gives a context. Is it open to the nation, or is it something that's specific to our community? So looking at how that plays out will be important.
Okay, so I mean, just my point of view, and I think the board has given pretty clear direction that we want those meetings to be open to the public without any kind of screening on who can attend and cannot attend. And I guess you could say maybe people who aren't in the district, don't live in the district, maybe don't come, but I mean, to me, that was the goal, and not to have any kind of, because in the past we've had, school sites nominate, like principals select parents to go, select teachers to go, and it's all kind of a, more proactive process on the part of the school sites. And so now we want it to be more like the design, the planning process for the schools, which was that anybody could go. So is that the plan?
Definitely want it to be inclusive. So we're not there yet as far as how we're going to advertise it and how we make sure that we have the right space and that kind of thing. So we need to make sure, how are we going to be able to gauge, is it 100 people who will come? Is it 200, 300? And so they, as I was saying, they have experience in how to find out who's interested in the process and how to make sure that it is, as you said, open. We've, met with hundreds of people so far and anticipate it will be hundreds more by the time we're done. So yes.
Okay, thank you. And my second question is, all the focus group meetings, it's great that you guys have been out meeting with the school sites. What's the mechanism? I know we've had a big focus too with the strategic planning and making sure that it's a reporting out mechanism, so it's just a one-way communication going to administration, but a chance for everybody to hear you reflect back what you've heard. What is the forum for us or for the public to hear what you've heard from the?
So part of that will be, we'll come here and share that, part of that will be with our staff and share that. We're already sharing some of what we're hearing with our staff, because obviously our teachers and our staff members are the ones that are giving us the input. And so in order to be able to listen and be responsive, we're already, even though we're not done yet, responding to some of what we're hearing in the focus. So as we move throughout, whether or not it's through the portrait design team, this is what, those meetings, that this is what we're hearing, how does that influence what a portrait of a learner looks like, or it will be ongoing dialogue and input, it could lead into what the survey questions are. I think it's probably all of the above.
Okay, great. I mean, I think it's a good idea to talk about it during the portrait of a learner, but I would just encourage, the staff to be explicit in saying this specifically is what we heard from the focus groups, and then share all of it. And then, of course, it's gonna get addressed in different ways, and some things are not addressed as far as strategic planning. But I mean, I just think the more that we can just report out specifically and holistically on the feedback that you're getting, that would really be helpful for transparency and just public visibility into the process. And to me, doing kind of that report out as the kind of session one in the portrait, I don't know what Michelle has planned, but having here's what you've heard over the last 3 months, and spend an hour or whatever it takes to kind of go through what you've heard and let everybody hear that, I think would be a really beneficial exercise to kind of set a baseline. That's my opinion.
So, the survey that you have on this process timeline, the middle point of the survey, that's what you're envisioning as the climate survey?
The survey that will address climate culture, yes, in addition to whatever other areas there might be, yes, definitely.
So you're taking everything that you're learning from these focus groups meetings and the stuff that's going to be in this portrait of the learner, I guess. And so pulling all that together and then using that to create the questions for this climate survey.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, collectively. We also talked with, we actually were having a conversation with the union this last week and thinking about how do we, think about what kinds of questions we would want to ask to get at the kind of information we want. So definitely, yes.
Okay, so you'll have everything, fall, winter, so all these focus groups that are all going to be done by January, or by the beginning of the Portrait of the Learner sessions, or are they still?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about, just because I work in San Diego Unified and I'm a bit familiar with what their process is, just having it all on our website here in Del Mar, I think is really important so that all the community members have access to what we're doing and can input feedback directly online as well. I think having these sessions in person is fantastic. I also think it's great to have multiple platforms, and so having some online versions of these events is also really something worth considering, so that you can have more people attending and participating.
Thank you.
Just I completely agree with that, Catherine. That's a great point, and that's something also we have really focused on and hope that Patel could help us with. Is not just regular public meetings is one forum, but what are the multiple mechanisms for getting input into the survey? We've got the online, kind of having an online platform for sending comments and different topics is great. And so is that something that they're going to be giving us recommendations for as part of their contract?
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to echo everything I'm saying. I want to hear from as many people as possible, and as thoroughly as, and hopefully that's something that gets digested and it's brought back to us. But I mean, I definitely think that we need to incorporate as many people as possible who are willing to participate, and we should offer it up to them and let them know this is happening, and for them to participate. I want to see that information.
So it looks like the survey to staff, students, teachers, community, families, would that include all those stakeholders, this survey?
Yes.
Okay, so that would happen sometime, like late March, early
Yes.
April. When will you provide the board with, some options for who would be administering the survey? Because I know we've discussed using a third party. for
Right.
that.
Well, now here, yeah, with new conversations, obviously we're in conversations with TEL, and so that's, we've got that already, that we've already got that dialogue going regarding what the survey structure could look like as far as timing and what we would use as far as people's input, et cetera. And as you brought up, Catherine, I will absolutely follow up with UCSD and see what the options are there, and maybe there are, to see how, how we can get, our goal is the same, is to get input from everybody who's interested, and then use that input to set the priorities for the future. So definitely would share that same goal. So if there are ways to do that, that would contribute to that in a positive, productive way, we would definitely want to include those.
Yeah, I think it's important that we have this survey, but we continue to take the pulse on those stakeholders. Like the California Healthy Kids Survey is an annual survey. I think that that's important.
Thank you. Absolutely.
Yes, and on the survey, and just to reiterate, I know I say it every day, but the way I think about it is that this is like our baseline survey, right? So hopefully through Portrait of a Learner, through all these focus groups, we get to, what is our goal for kids in our district? And some of those are going to be able to be measured in the survey, and some of them are going to be external, like test scores or other factors. But for the subset of goals that can be measured with the survey, hopefully then we can go out with really quality questions and get our baseline. And then that way you can set goals for the next year and say if you want a 5% increase in opinions on this or whatever the topics are. But I'm hoping that it's a tightly designed survey that is repeated on an annual basis so we can see changes in our progress to our goal in a very specific way. So that's a lot of work to get a good survey together, so I just wouldn't wait too long to get whether it's going to be the TEL that's going to design the survey or we drafted in-house, or whether you're going to get a third party or UCSD, wherever, but I think that has to really be dialed in, so we have something that's quality that can be repeated on an annual basis.
That's just what I was gonna ask you, is are you looking at this as something that you're thinking that'll be repeated on an annual basis? Is that something that we all are thinking about?
I am, and I want to know, I think I would like to know the costs for these people that are the TEL's cost versus UCSD's cost, especially I would want to be ongoing, and maybe even multiple times per year, biannually.
Yeah, because currently we're talking about, currently talking about just the strategic planning process, which only happens every 5 years or something like that. So I was kind of wondering, if it's, in terms of the survey, then that'd be something that we're asking for separately on an annual basis.
Whether it be annual, something that's periodic, so during the 5-year plan, or whatever we come up with, and during that timeline, that we're taking some incremental base, surveys and seeing, are we progressing towards what we're wanting to get to? And so are there areas that we're improving, are there areas that we're not improving on? And so if there's areas that we've gone backwards on, that's something we need to shore up. And so that's, I have the same vision that we would, this is where we are, lay of the land, we're identifying what the issues are, what the problems are, and then we'll get better at it over time.
Right, and then over 5 years, the goals can change, right? There could be new initiatives, new programs, new priorities, and then those could always be, there could be new, performance indicators that the district wants to use, and so those could always be incorporated in the future. So it's not like you're locked in, for a survey, that's all you're gonna do for 5 years. It's gonna probably evolve, but it gives you better data if you have it as well.
Yes, identifying the right priorities vision up front is going to be very important, which is why we're doing so much on this end and including so many people. And I think, you're echoing that, and we're already hearing from a meeting with hundreds of people, and that will be added to over the course of the next couple of months, which is great.
This is very specific, I know, but I would love to see within this survey some kind of indicator on what arts, since we are a community-funded district, as Erica mentioned earlier, and we have a lot of autonomy in our dollars and how we spend them, how our district would like to spend our dollars in regard to early education. So I would love to see a component of that survey focused very specifically on early education, transitional kindergarten being the main question we ask our community.
But I mean, it really depends what the goals are, right? So if there's a goal comes out of the portrait of a learner that says the goal is to, you know, do X, Y, or Z for early education, then you measure that. You don't use, this is not the survey to measure what the new goals should be, because those should be established by the time you get to the survey. So I just want to clarify, this is not like just an opinion poll. This is a baseline for the performance of the district on certain metrics.
Okay, I guess I'm also considering the survey to ask the community how they want, like, this would be a goal of the district.
So that's what I mean, my opinion would be that that's what community comes to the portrait of a learner meeting, like that's what that's for, right? So you want to be in the initial stages developing the vision, and then, you know, getting measurements, yeah, and then, so that all has to be like vetted before you get to the survey, because the survey is just getting the baseline of, you already have your goals by the time you have the survey.
But I think the point of the survey, in part, was to get the climate of the teachers, the community, the students, as well as what you're talking about in terms of these goals. So it's multi-part, but I don't know that it is a way to measure priorities, is what you're saying in the community, other than having those priorities measured in the portrait of the learner section of.
Right, like if you, but climate could be part of it, is part of it, because, you know, if you have, presumably there's a goal that comes out of the portrait of a learner session, it has to do with the staff and teacher climate, for example. So let's say that that's a goal that comes out of that first session, that you put a question in the survey about, that relates to that question. So it is, you should only be measuring things that you actually are wanting to achieve, like, not the things that you don't want. The opinion part is happening earlier so that people can all weigh in.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something in focus groups and it was portrait design, these portrait design meetings, and it's a matter of what priorities do you have, because there are competing priorities for our dollars. So if you're doing TK, it has to come at the expense of something else, because we have limited dollars in the district. And so that's all, where do we prioritize small class sizes over having a TK program, or STEAM Plus, or world language programs, and so, you know, for those dollars that we have, how do we rank things? And that's where I would see very early on, is trying to figure out where we as a district, what are our stakeholders, what do we value? And if we say, I value TK, or I want preschool from day zero, at the expense of something else, then that's what we would move towards. But I think we need to figure that out early on in those priorities in the portraits.
And that again bolsters the reason for having as many people attend these meetings as possible, because we want to set those questions that we're going to ask in those early meetings. And if there's not a significant amount of representation in the group, you're going to miss some of the things that maybe somebody wanted to have in there. So we encourage the door being wide open as much as possible. If you're talking about hundreds of people and you're going to go find hundreds more, as I look at Chris, I'm wondering what facility we use to have that meeting, but I'll leave that up to him.
Thank you. I think that's a pretty thorough discussion. That's what we're intending, what we're looking for. So
Thank you.
thank you very much, Dr. McCook. We are moving on to 8.3. Actually, we're going to move back to 5.8 first right now, which is public hearing, board information, and approval of open The public hearing for the submission of the initial proposals for the reopeners of 2022-23 DMUSD and DMCTA labor agreements. It's a public hearing conducted for purpose of hearing from the public prior to the submission of the initial proposals for the reopeners of the 2022-23 DMUSD and DMCTA labor agreements. The hearing is open at 7:15 p.m. by Board President Mock. Is there any public input concerning the opening of the public hearing for the submission of the initial proposals for the reopeners of the 2022-23 DMSD DMCTA labor agreement? No. So is there a motion to approve the opening of the public hearing for the submission of the initial proposals for the reopeners of 2022-23 DMSD and DMCTA labor agreement?
I'll move to open the meeting.
Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? There's no one. Motion to approve the opening of public hearing has passed. Now I will skip back to 8.3, which is the board approval amendment to employment agreement for Assistant Superintendent Business Services. The Brown Act was amended effective January 1st, 2017 to require that the governing board, prior to taking final action on an employment agreement, to orally report a summary of a recommendation for the salaries, salary schedules, or compensation paid in the form of fringe benefits or local agency executives. Assistant Superintendent Business Services is a local agency executive, and a proposed contract amendment is before us this evening. The district's governing board and impacted employees have always thought and acted like intended for the contractual biannual performance benchmark merit pay review and approval to be considered credible compensation when earned. The district is now informed that these performance benchmark merit payments are not credible. Therefore, the parties are considering revising this employment agreement to fold the performance benchmark merit payments into the base salary moving forward. Except as described here, the proposed amendment would have no impact on the term of the agreement or make any other changes to compensation, longevity payments, and fringe benefits in the current agreement approved by the board on July 27, 2022. Rather, the up to $7,000 in performance benchmark merit payments are being removed and rolled into base salary. As a result, starting on January 1st, 2023, if approved, the Assistant Superintendent Business Services shall receive an annual salary of $199,400. Is there a motion to approve the amendment to the employment agreement for Assistant Superintendent Business Services? Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? No one. Motion to approve the amendment to employment agreement for Assistant Superintendent of Services passed. And then we move on to 8.4, which is for approval for amendment to employment agreement for Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services. Assistant Superintendent Instructional Services, a local agency executive, proposed contract amendments before us this evening. The district's governing board, in fact, employees have always thought and acted like intended for the contractual biannual performance merit, benchmark merit pay review and approval to be considered credible compensation when earned. The district is now informed these performance benchmark merit payments are not credible, therefore parties are considering revising this employment agreement to fold performance benchmark merit payments to the base salary moving forward. As described here, the proposed amendment would have no impact on the term of the agreement or make any other changes, compensation, longevity payments, or fringe benefits in the current agreement approved by the board on July 27, 2022. Rather, the up to $7,000 performance benchmark merit payments are being removed and rolled to base salary. As a result, starting on January 1st, 2023, if approved, the Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services shall receive an annual salary of $220,169. Is there a motion to approve the amendment to the employment agreement for the Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services?
I'll move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No one. Motion to approve the amendment to employment agreement for Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services passed. And 8.5. Board approval, same thing for the agreement, employment agreement for Assistant Superintendent of Services. Bear with me, same thing. The Assistant Superintendent Human Resources, a local agency executive, proposed contract amendments before us this evening. District Governing Board, impact employees have always thought, acted like, and intended for the contractual biannual performance benchmark merit pay review and approval to be considered credible compensation when earned. District is now informed that these performance benchmark merit payments are not credible, therefore the parties are considering revising this employment agreement to fold the performance benchmark merit payments into base salary moving forward. Except as described here, the proposed amendment would have no impact on term of employment, on term of the agreement, or make any other changes to the compensation, longevity payments, or fringe benefits in the current agreement approved by the board on July 27, 2022. Rather, up to 7,000 performance benchmark merit payments are being removed and enrolled in base salary. As a result, starting on January 1st, 2023, if approved, the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources shall receive an annual salary of $194,200. Is there a motion to approve the amendment to the employment agreement for the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? No one? Motion to approve the amendment to the employment agreement for the Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources passed. Finally, we're doing 8.6, employment amendment to the employment agreement for the superintendent. The superintendent is a local agency executive, and the proposed contract amendment is before us this evening. The district's governing board and impact employees have always thought, acted like, and intended for the contractual biannual performance merit benchmark merit pay review and approval to be considered credible compensation when earned. The district is now informed that these performance benchmark merit payments are not credible. Therefore, the parties are considering revising this employment agreement to fold the performance benchmark merit payments into base salary moving forward. Except as described here, the proposed amendment would have no impact on the term of the agreement, make any other changes to compensation, longevity payments, and fringe benefits in the current agreement approved by the board on July 27, 2022. Rather, the up to 13,000 in performance benchmark merit payments are being removed and rolled into base salary. As a result, starting on January 1st, 2023, if approved, the superintendent shall receive an annual salary of $285,085. Is there a motion to approve the amendment to the employment agreement for the superintendent?
I'll move to approve, and I'll just add that in all of these, they're just doing, we have to do this because of the CalPERS and STRS requirements, so we're just conforming to what they are requiring us to do. So it's doesn't change our overall budget, doesn't change the total compensation of these packages, but it's something that we need to do, be out in line with the STRS and PERS policies.
And if it wasn't clear, the board's intent was that all along. I've said that many times, but that was very clear when it was the intent of the board was to have these be credible for purposes. So is there?
So I made the motion.
So yes, I made the motion. Is there a second?
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And all those opposed? No one? Motion to approve the amendments and employment agreement for superintendent pass. All right, moving on to 9, section 9, operational facilities. Order number 1, board report facilities update, Mr. Delahanty.
Thank you, President Mock, members of the board, clerk, Mr. Delahanty, Assistant Superintendent of Business Services. And tonight's our facilities updates. We'll actually look a little bit shorter in our topics to cover because we have a specific update on Mar Hills Academy coming up as 9.2. For Pacific Sky School, we don't have a whole lot to update for you. We are very close to sign off. We are some final punch list items with our kitchen, some small items that we are just wrapping up. The project is coming to completion, and we look forward to bringing to the board some final numbers. We have not used all of the contingencies and allowances, so we think we'll be able to come back to the board in the coming months with this project being under the budget that we brought with the GMP. So I don't have a number for you yet, but we look forward to that sometime in the spring when we have some final numbers. For the Denver Heights School rebuild, I do not have a lot to update on from our last board meeting. As you know, we are delayed to the injunction. We are at the point where the opponents did appeal to the California Supreme Court. Just before the last board meeting, we have January 3rd is the date by which we need to hear from the state Supreme Court for the original lawsuit. We also have a hearing on the second lawsuit that was brought against the city of San Diego, but the district is the real party in interest. That is on Friday. And so we will continue to update the board, the community as we hear back, and learn more from that lawsuit. And our hope is that we'll be able to end the injunction and move forward with this project as soon as possible. With that, I'd be happy to answer questions on our major projects.
Chris, any questions? Okay. We'll move on to 9.2, which is Mar Hills Academy Modernization Project.
This evening, we are bringing a Mar Hills Academy update on the modernization and the process we're going through. As I've shared with the board, this has been a longer process based on the work that has had to be done with our seismic retrofit needs and with the age of the building. Tonight, I have with me Steve Kendrick, who's the principal of Lion-Office. He's been leading the work for us with Lion-Office and been doing an excellent job with both the work on the back end and then all the work with our community updates. And so Steve is going to lead this presentation, and I'll add in a few things as we move along. So Steve,
thanks, Chris. Good evening, Board of Trustees, Dr. McClure and Cabinet. You're all there with me on this side of the room. It's our honor to present this update to you on Mar Hills. I know a lot of you, let's see some people in the audience that have been in the community, so they'll see a lot of the same information. So moving forward, a little background on the history of the school. It's over 50 years old, and it was really built in two big phases. It's starting in 1972. It was an open concept plan, which was very in at the time. Teaching modalities have changed since then. And then in 2001, there was a campus modernization to actually build classroom walls. It was originally an open concept school. In 2002, the PAC was added on site. And then 2018 is when you implemented your district-wide master plan for the development of the school. So this was what that master plan looked like at the time. You can see there's some modernization areas to the school, some outdoor learning areas, dealing with the portable classrooms, changing those to permanent classrooms, and then just some additional security and covered areas that were on the outside. We've gone through several community meetings, what we call stakeholder engagement, with both the cabinet and at the school site. We even involved the kids in one session, and to tell you the truth, some fifth graders have some pretty insightful thoughts on their school. But through that we did some polling, so we did a little word cloud of what came out of that. So you can see some of the words that came out of that, welcoming, school, just really, they wanted to get a better presence of their school. The board on the right was actually a visual listening exercise we took everybody through, and it was, show us what you like, show us what you don't like. So we took that information back, and that sort of led us to look at certain things in a certain design direction. We went through this whole series of critical success factors, and what we do as a firm is we like to do this because that's our way of seeing how well we met the requirements of that particular project. It's not, schools are not a cookie cutter thing, it's each community is different, and so we want to hear what the community had to say on that. So some of the things that came out of it was improve the interior circulation, give us a new entry. I don't know if you know that Mar Hills on the website is the only one that doesn't have a picture of the school entry, it's just a sign. So that was a big thing. Do some outdoor learning spaces, involve the stakeholders in the community throughout the process, updating some building systems, bringing in natural light. Some of the classrooms, if you've been there, know that they come to a point and they just have a glass door on the outside, and that's the only daylight that they have. And then do the kindergarten classrooms and build some collaboration spaces. So as Chris mentioned, there's been a lot going on behind the scenes as we dug into the state architect's archives and pulled out more and more information about the school. I always refer to it with my team as it's like peeling back an onion. There's always another layer of information we find out. But the bottom line was that we have to do a seismic retrofit. because of the state architect and the age of the school. And so they have this process where we have to go through and create a document called the Evaluation and Design Criteria Report, or ECR. The state architect has looked at that. We have some directions on what direction we need to take the seismic retrofit to do that. So that's where we're in the process of that right now, getting all of that approved. Part of that involves actually going out and physically looking and testing beams and things in the school, so that process is ongoing. And then during our design process, we developed this pyramid of must do, should do, nice to do things. The must do category is always those code requirements to bring everything up to speed. The should do's, if we can afford it, we do these, and the nice do's are if we had enough on the budget, then we can just do everything we wanted. So right now, because of what we found with the structure, the age of the school, the code requirements, all the code requirements have changed since the 70s till now. So as you know, our building codes change every 3 years. Every time there's a major seismic event in California, the codes get ratcheted up. And so since 1972, we've had a couple major earthquakes. So that's what we're seeing now reflected in what we need to go through with the school to bring it up to its current codes. So doing that, the must-do pieces, we've spent more than our original budget. You can see that we're at 15.9 million, so that's beyond our original budget that we had. Yeah.
So a couple of things that come out of this are, this is a cost estimate, and it's led us to realizing within our Measure MM funds that we needed to focus within the school building for the most part with what we'll be doing. There's some code things with ADA path of travel to the outside of it, but we've also begun looking at, and we will be able to take care of things like cleaning the field or taking care of playgrounds through other funding sources. So at this point, what we'll find is that there are certain things that will be measured in projects and certain things that we'll be looking at through like restricted maintenance, and that the age of those playgrounds would then be replaced based on restricted maintenance. So we are now looking at split funding as well, because we know that there are needs that need to be addressed at the school site. So we're going to find that when we think about it, there is a project that does the building and then some ancillary pieces, and there will be some other projects that land under another funding source and are done more through our summer projects and working with our maintenance team. As you know, we brought on Erickson Hall, and as we look towards construction, we'll be working with them as to timing for those, because we don't want to redo the full field and then have to lay down equipment and materials and ruin half the field while we're doing the modernization. So we're working with them to time out when we will do those pieces, but we are budgeting for it, and we'll make sure that we take care of those exterior pieces for play and outdoors as well, beyond what comes in this project.
So that led us to this plan that we have right now, basically looking at the site. So there's some site improvements that will happen. One of them is accessibility down to the schools. There's a ramp system that will go down and drop you right at the front door. Right now, that accessible path goes around the back and comes out right to where some portable classrooms are. We're going to change the drop-off a little bit, increase that. We've got to do a new flyer truck turnaround at the end of the parking lot, and there will be some parkour upgrades, some finishes that will be redone once we remove the portables that are on campus. And then Chris mentioned the field. I think the only thing we're probably going to be able to do there is get an accessible path down to the field from the hardcore area. And then the new plan. So given that we have the classrooms divided up now, our goal was to improve the acoustics between the classrooms. So you can see the wall areas, that's the light blue are the classroom areas. The sort of that medium colored blue is our innovation space, so art, science, in that area. The pink or sort of rose colored area is the admin and staff in front of the school area. And then the mint green off to the left, we're creating actually 2 new classrooms for the kindergarten, giving them the right size classroom with their own restroom pod in that classroom space. And then we did take a look at the PAC. One of the things we talked about was...
Can I pass the previous slide? Is that new construction, that green? Is that inside the existing shell?
No, that's within the existing building. So we're not increasing, and I just said that, we're not increasing the footprint of the school.
that's over where the art room is.
The art room's in that part of there now. And that's that diagonal line that goes up the little corridor there between it, that is actually the break between the original construction in 1972 and what was added in 1975. So that wall has to, that line has to stay. Then we look at the pack. Can we get a music room in there? One of the things about, we looked at doing it on the stage area, the classroom space is just, the physical space is just really limiting in the size of the teaching area. It's about 650 square feet, and we really need 900 to 1,000 square feet to really do a music program. So we looked at what happens if we take the dressing rooms out. That gets us a little bit more square footage, but we found that once we do that, there's a major column that has to stay, because if you know that the pack, the roof line steps down there, so there's a big column that has to stay in the middle of that space. And then the roof ladder to that low roof is in that space, and it just was not conducive to that. The space didn't have any windows that we could put in any place, so it was really hard to get some daylighting in, which was one of the goals we were trying to do for all of the spaces.
So one thing that this leads us to is this is the one piece of the original idea. We thought that we'd be able to use that backspace where we then don't have a space for music in the main building. So we knew in our original FMP, we talked about potentially converting portables to permanent. And then we've, at the board's direction, we've looked at how do we just remove all the portables. When we look at Mar Hills, we are going to be a little bit short if we just remove all the portables. So we need to consider a classroom for music. And I think if we're putting one in, we should put in another for ASP, and that can actually be funded out of the ELOP program. So we can fund that second one. These two would end up being like the two that we have in the back of Ocean Air, stucco-sided. They'd be simple ones that we could put in on a pad. But when we look at the size of the school and the current need, there really isn't a way to get that extra space in our investigation as we've gone through it. So there will be a need for the music room, and as we're putting in that music room, I think we should also, and I would recommend that we put in an ASP classroom because we can pay for it out of that ELOP funding, which we have more funding than we're able to use right now.
I mean, Chris, if you're gonna do that, I would just advocate for permanent buildings, just to like take out all this portable, just put back quasi-portable or temporary structures. To me, like defeats the purpose of this whole project. So I definitely.
So what if we go with a permanent stick built, we're looking at probably 3 times the cost, 2 times the cost from the, we started pricing out, and we can get one of those, and if we can do something like we do with Ocean Air, then it is something that will last us for, you know, it's not a 20 years and you're replacing it.
Yeah, but that's not the point of this renovation. This is supposed to be something that's permanent, long-lasting. When the people who voted for the bond, it was to get the school fully renovated. So just putting, I mean, I know it's not a 20-year portable, but to me, that's just not an acceptable alternative. So I would like to see that revisited. I mean, I don't know how the music room situation works, but to me, there's lots of space in that New York. You know, for a music room, so I don't understand what the problem is there.
If we're gonna have a standalone music room, there isn't space in the PAC. If we headed to a shared space, that would be a different situation. I'm just saying, looking at it, that we are very tight right now with the total number of classrooms we have in the other space. If there is direction not to add anything, then we can. We look at adding full building, like a new building or space. We're adding a number, a fairly large amount of cost to it as well. So
I don't have solutions, but I do know that that's not in keeping with the spirit of the bond and what was intended for the school.
I would just point out that the buildings that we put into Ocean Air, I defy anybody to take a look at those and tell me that they look like relocatable classrooms, because I think they're kind of a hybridized item which already has state approval, state architect approval.
Right, that's what we'd be looking. That's what I would propose to do, because think that we'd be looking at how can we keep this project as close to in budget as we can, while also providing the space that we'll need at the school site. And it would be, what I would propose would be something like we have at Ocean Air, or we also have at CDM, where we've been able to refurbish and continue to use and would be able to use for another 40 or 50 years.
And as someone who had my child in those exact rooms last year at Ocean Air, they look and feel like portables, even if you don't call them portables, or they can last longer. So to me, it's all one of the same. You know, it's not the level of classroom that I think we're looking for.
They're not gonna be used as regular classrooms, they're used as, music, not a full day K through 6 classroom. It's a music room where you're going in there for an hour. So it's not like students gonna be in there full day, full classroom day. I think the ones that we have over Ocean Air are nice. I mean, they're not, as Doug said, they're not the portable portables, but when we discussed them many years ago, they were designed to be long-lasting, permanent structure, permanent light structures, higher quality than a relocatable. What I think we have to be cognizant of is the money that we do have in MF, knowing that we have a lot of cost overruns with these projects. Let's do what we can. I think that there's going to be, if we can get money, in the future with state projects and things like that, these are items that we can address as 10 years from now, 20 years from now.
And we can do further analysis too, so we can bring back something that has a little bit more analysis for the board and share a little bit more about where we are with the budget, what the cost would be for those two options, and I'd be happy to bring more information back related to that, because that is outside the footprint of the rest of what this project is, and can be addressed. We have a little more time to address that.
Yeah, I'd love to see more about cost and how we can kind of price this out. You're mentioning that the cost for permit would be significantly more, and that is a concern of mine. It's already, at this point, looks like we're only doing must-dos, and there isn't a whole lot of wiggle room there. And it's unfortunate, but I mean, that's kind of the situation we're in. So, but to get kids a music room or whatever thing can be done, I mean, it's better than not having one of those things. So.
Yeah. And the must-dos are really, they're bringing them up, seismic, fire code, sprinklers, code upgrades. Those are not things that we wanted to do for modernization, to making this what we want it to be. I mean, and that's spending the entire pot plus some. So we do have to try to figure out how we can get all of our, the wants that you should do categories.
And I think you could characterize those must-dos as have-to-dos.
Yeah, but we have to do.
Because it's not like we want to do them, but we got to do them.
But there were more than we anticipated.
Exactly.
And this is why this was originally a tear down. So on the original thoughts of this, as you inherit down to go to school.
Well, I'll ask the man himself, is it better to do that? I mean, from a financial standpoint?
I think we need to take a look and see what the program would be to get all those spaces in, see what we would need for square footage and things.
And I don't think we can revisit that necessarily now. I think that was something.
That was $50 million.
But that is worth, discussing. We have totally no information here. It's more than 50% the cost of a new school.
Yeah.
To do improvements and end up with the exact same thing with barely any improvements to actual circulation or any. Improving the entry is not sufficient for the size of this project.
So, we just went a few months back to Pacific Sky School. It's amazing, breathtaking, like one of the most amazing schools I've ever seen before. And are children safe who are attending Mar Hills right now? If there's an earthquake tomorrow, I mean.
Yeah, I mean, that building has been through a couple seismic events now, but it's the way that the state architect looks at the current code. They want us to upgrade, basically upgrade the building.
Yeah.
It's not saying it's unsafe, it's just that.
I mean.
Yeah.
the playgrounds there are not Pacific Skies playgrounds. We definitely want to, do that, but there's also all the interior spaces that you're talking about, so I know hindsight's 20/20, but, yeah, looking at the funding that we have allocated to the different schools, I don't see the equity right now.
I mean, I don't disagree. I don't like looking at it and seeing that like there's always, we're doing things we have to do. But reality of it is that this probably money could be spent better in terms of, how we fix it up. But just reality is that I don't think we have that response. I mean, it is kind of where it is.
And that's the question that I had. I mean, are we spending good money after bad by trying to fix something? I don't want to say, putting lipstick, making it. But if it's going to cost that much money just to get us to a certain level that we couldn't do anyway, if we were to tear it down and put a new one in, then maybe it makes sense to do that.
I mean, if we're talking about a tear down now, that's got to be.
Well, that's what I'm asking. I don't know what the costs are for that. We didn't know when we did this, we didn't know that we would have to spend the money to bring it up to a certain level. So this is all new information for us. And now that we know it's gonna cost that much money, and now that we know it's, we gotta do this in order to, and maybe we're not gonna hit all the things that the community wants, because we have to do this, is there an alternative that we can do to knock it all down and maybe build it up again? That might make more sense.
But I will say that would be dramatically more expensive than meaning that we would have to reallocate from other projects. So we can look at some basic assessment of that, but,
Is that even feasible with whatever bond money we even have left?
well, that's what I'm saying, we have to reallocate it from other projects.
Right.
If we were to, add $20 million or something to this project, then that $20 million has to come from other projects that are further down the line.
Is it the oldest school or was Delmar Heights built before?
Delmar Heights was the oldest school.
Okay, so, I mean, we're down Delmar Heights and this is the second oldest school, so I just.
When we were originally doing the facilities master plan, the plan was to tear down both the heights and the hills and rebuild. Yes.
Yeah, but now it's almost the suggestion is to do a third rebuild.
Those numbers are.
Yeah, these don't even have any basic reality now. I mean, I look at these like the low inflation. How many years was this now? But it's something we, need to think about and look at as to whether we go that route. Is there state money around? I mean, is the state going to be putting bonds on in the future? They've talked about it.
They are, but our eligibility for this school is no more than $1 million. We don't have a lot of eligibility for Delmar Hills. And we are working on our eligibility and getting what state funds we can. We don't have anything right around the corner that would provide us half of the rebuild for this or something like that.
So Chris, would you be able to kind of maybe in a upcoming process give us like a kind of pie in the sky, like this is like how much it costs if we were to kind of completely redo it?
I'd like to come back with something like that.
Yeah.
And, I think we should put a little bit of thought to it if we're going to share a number on what it might cost to rebuild,
Right.
square footage, those kind of things. I also think that if this is a conversation we want to have, I think this should be couched in the overall facilities program. And I think that it would be ideal to have some of that conversation when we restart Delmar Heights and we have a clearer view of what is the total cost of Delmar Heights, because then we have a clearer view of what is the overall bond program and what are the overall costs that we're going to have with Delmar Heights. We have a pretty clear idea of what the cost would likely be with this. And then that gives us a clearer view of what is the overall, what do we have left if we make a change to Delmar Hills, and how does that impact the rest of the school sites and the budgets that we have for those. So I think that it's a good conversation to have, and I think that it would be a more informed conversation if we had it with Delmar Heights started back up.
Another question you might have already shared, how long is if we were to do the seismic retrofitting, when would that occur and how long would that take?
It's part of the modernization.
Architect.
It would be part of the modernization project that we're sharing on right now.
So I guess my question is, can we continue doing the,
So if we did, how long would it take to do that modernization of the seismic retrofitting? That's just something like we have to do.
Not each other's school.
No, not, I'm just saying, if
So
we keep the school and just do that, is that done, is that,
it would just, the modernization would include the seismic retrofit
I know,
as
but
part of
what
the
would, how long would it?
And the
take
time
to
frame for that would be
complete?
somewhere in the range of 14 to 20 months.
And the students would still be there while that's taking place? Okay, yeah.
So as we get more solid plans for construction documents, if we move forward with this, we would then be getting a more solid number on the timeline for it, and working with Harrison Hall on the phasing of it. So if we start this summer, work through the year, and finish the next summer, is that something that would be possible to do? So we would be working on phasing options with them as we have the more final steps with the plan.
I'm just gonna put one more plug out there for equity.
Well, what I don't want to happen is to go through this process and only do the have-tos. And then the community who has lived through this and voiced their concerns and desires comes in and says, it's the same school we had before. Well, and we could say, wow, we tightened a whole bunch of screws and it's gonna go through a real bad earthquake according to the state architect. So you should be happy. But they're not gonna be happy because they've lived through this and they wanna see the beauty of, you know, what they had planned. And so if there's a way to get to us at least a ballpark idea that it's gonna cost 15 million, maybe 20 million to do and throw in some of the things that the community wants, but it's gonna cost 60 million to build a whole new school, well, okay, that makes it a little easier for us to sit down and figure out what the best thing to do. But if we're gonna add some money to this budget, if we can do that, and accommodate some of the things that the community wants us to do, not just the have-to-dos, I think it's important to do that. So if you could kind of, I mean, I'm not looking for exact numbers, but.
Yeah, we can bring back numbers, and I think that I just have to reiterate that if we add to the budget, it will come from another school. And so I understand the equity, but none of our schools that are getting modernized are going to end up looking like Pacific Sky. I mean, they're all going to get modernized and they're going to be updated, and we're going to find ways to improve connections to the indoor-outdoor as best we can. We're going to find ways to find collaboration spaces as best we can. As we look back to this design is really focused on having an innovation space in the middle, having at the travel, the two edges that we have here. This is collaboration space in the primary and the upper grade. So really looking at how can we do the best to get to the focus and the vision that we have within the constraints we have. And so I mean, I think ideally we could put more money to every one of the projects, but I just want to couch it with the fact that if we do increase, it will come at the cost of another project. And so then, and I'm happy to share what it might look like if we wanted to rebuild Mar Hills, and then the impact that would have to the remaining of the bond program. And then that also leads to a conversation about, so how do we take care of the remaining needs that we have at other school sites, because we will run through the money that we have for the bonds without being able to get to all of the other sites if we had that kind of a cost of this. So I'm happy to bring back some numbers to the board, but I also have to just be upfront and share that will be some of the repercussion if we add a very sizable amount of budget to this budget.
And I'll just say it's unfortunate because we've already had to deal with realizing that there's going to be allocation of resources in other places because we had a hearing on Friday that we weren't anticipating. And then the cost of building what we got to build has gone up, but we didn't anticipate it. So we know there's contingencies. We know, and we just got to respond to them. but I think it's important, that we be sensitive to what the community has worked hard and entrusted us to do. And not simply say, you know, put a rubber gasket around here and make it, you know, jiggle a little when there's an earthquake.
I mean, I think it's unfortunate that there are all these kind of situations that came up. I mean, the reality is it's like 70 or built in the 70s. I mean, that's something that it wasn't going to be, there are things that need to come up, and it wasn't going to be cheap to fix these things. And, you know, I can see putting options out there and having the numbers and kind of seeing like what this might cost and then where the alternative, where it might need to come from. And that would be kind of helpful in making a decision, I think.
Can I also, I will, let Steve also share some of the things that because I get that I derailed this a little bit by talking about some of the need with the music room, but there are some things that we've shared with the community and with the staff that do make some improvements to some of the areas. So it doesn't get us to a brand new school, but maybe we could let Steve share a little bit of that too, and just speak to some of the things that we have been able to include to make it more than just, you know, that we put in a new HVAC unit. There are some improvements that maybe are made to our innovation spaces, et cetera.
So, back on, now we still look at the column and stuff. So this is what we envisioned at the new front door of the school. It's doing it, that's a real simple approach to just creating some walls and changing the roof line a little bit at the front entry. The doors pretty much stay the same. One of the things that we're also proposing to do is instead of that really steep concrete walk that goes down, is to actually make some stairs that go down to make it a little more elegant, because we'll have already addressed getting access from Mango down to the front door of the school. And then, you know, the surf items, again, it's the whole, that was really a key for us to sort of come up with this beach theme, bringing some color into the program. So, what do you do when you're first starting to surf? You learn on the beach. You learn how to get up on the board on the beach, and then you go out into the water. So we took that sort of cue in some of the ideas and the spaces with the colors and the finishes. So this is an overall plan on the left, and then a large plan of the innovation area on the right. So the idea was the dark brown is the boardwalk. That's the circulation area that we have throughout the school. The tan areas are the collaboration spaces that Chris mentioned. And that's the beach, so tan color. And then as you get in the innovation area, you sort of start to go out into the ocean. So it's the idea of this different colors of blue on the floor to create this appearance of waves. And then coming into the school, sort of changing the entry a little bit, giving it a little more space, a little more breathing room. It's really crowded right now, especially with heights on campus, so there's a lot going on in that small lobby. But the idea was to open it up a little bit, and then to create these light fixtures that actually like to refer to them as our seagulls, because they're sort of floating through the space into the innovation area. So this would be the innovation lab. You can see the boardwalk area on the left, and then sort of the different colors of blue on the floor for the water area. The biggest change we're making in this space is we're proposing to take the ceiling out. Right now it has a 9-foot ceiling. To take that out and open it up. The roof structure is primarily these deep blue laminated beams. So the idea would be to expose those, put a new ceiling finish up between those, and then create these fins that also help with the acoustics. And then the light fixtures and the HVAC ductwork would all be exposed in that space. The art lab, again, part of that same space, but you can see it's a little bit different. We have a little more cabinets space, some ideas with some furniture, but you know that's all still to be resolved. But the idea, this has some really, where it sits in the building, has great outdoor light coming in from that courtyard. And then those breakout areas, or the collaboration spaces, we talked about the beach, if you will. This is what those would potentially look like. This is the one that happens to be at the east side of the building. So the next steps, We need to complete the structural observations, that's going on, we have an inspector of record on site looking at that now. Then we need to move into our construction documents and get those drawings all ready and submit those to DSA for approval. And then the final step, obviously, the big step that is taken into construction.
So these, where you're opening it up and everything, are these really from the structural components that you have to do for the seismic upgrades? You're gonna have to rip things out anyway, and as you're putting them back, that's when you're making this improvement. So this is really part of the seismic upgrades that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
So part of the building is, it's a lot of column-free spaces in there. So in that space with the Innovation Lab, it gave us a chance to open that up and really open up that volume. The seismic upgrades are going to primarily happen between the classroom spaces, so they'll be in a wall, or on the outside of the concrete. Those concrete panels need to be removed with the lateral resisting elements between all those existing steel columns that are there. So the steel columns will all stay, and so we put new walls there. What that did was sort of a found opportunity in that one of the things we're able to do is because we're taking those concrete panels out and creating new walls for the structural system, it gave us a chance to add some windows to into the classrooms, which we couldn't have done that in those concrete panels. We wouldn't have been able to cut those.
So is this stuff that's in here considered the must-do in the budget then? Or
Yes.
the should-do?
These are the must-dos.
Okay, so all of these improvements in terms of the new front door, the innovation center, opening things up, a lot of the, the art, you moving the art lab, the breakout area, that's
in that number.
must do, which.
Well, it's in that overall number.
Okay.
Construction.
All right, okay. That makes it a little bit easier to swallow on those. Because I'm thinking none of that gets happening. That's what I thought with the budget. Okay.
I thought you were just gonna tighten some screws.
No, it's much more involved. We have to pull all of the ceilings out anyway to get access to all those.
Okay,
things.
so you've already pulled it out, so this is now, as you're putting it back, so these are really more of all of these code, fire sprinklers, where you're pulling it all out, the seismic upgrades, all of that. And as you're putting it back, you're making these improvements to make it look like you designed it.
Correct.
Okay.
But just to clarify on that, because it says, I'm looking at the should-dos, and it's talking about the campus entry, indoor-outdoor learning, natural daylight, and learning spaces all being, the learning spaces being really addressed except for the STEAM classrooms. But the other three, those all seem like they were included in the pictures, which you said are must-dos, but they're listed in the should-dos.
Right, those that are listed on the should-dos are in that 15.9 million number.
Okay, so that is all must-do and.
It says must-do
Must-do
construction,
and
and
those
it
three
doesn't say must-do
should-dos.
and could-do.
Okay, yeah, because when we were looking at, must-do is 15 million, plus all these things we'd like to do here, which, that's what we were starting to think about, we might as well just stare it down then.
So I think the way you've explained it in conversation with us, Steve, has been there's some should-dos that come into the must-dos because you have to take out the walls.
Yes,
So
yeah.
if we didn't have to take out the walls at this cost, we might not be able to do some of the natural lighting in the windows. But because we have to take out the walls, we're including some of those in it. We would be, as Steve said, replacing all of the walls, and therefore those walls would allow us to get some natural lighting in through the windows. So each of the classrooms would be done a modernization like we've done in our classrooms at all of our other schools. So you'd end up with new carpeting and whiteboard wall and general setup that we have with the other classrooms. And then there'd be some improvements to the basic windows and natural lighting you have in the classroom.
If you could go back to the pyramid,
Yeah, let's go to this slide.
because it's just confusing, because at the bottom it says must do construction cost estimate 15.9, but what you're pointing out is a lot of the should do. So should that say must do and should do construction cost 15.9?
Yeah, it should, yeah, you're right, it should say must do and the limited should do. We had a bigger should do list at one time. And so these were the things that I don't want to say you get them for free, but we had to do them anyway because of everything we were doing with the bus.
It's a Venn diagram.
Yes,
So
yes.
Yeah, I get it, but, I just,
Yeah, we probably could have done a better job on the terminology
But as to those 4 things that are listed in the should do's, those are can do's.
there. Those are candies.
Okay. I'm getting more.
Indoor, outdoor shared.
Wait till I get to the will
would be.
do's.
Your indoor, outdoor shared learning would be a little bit more minimal than we would have originally looked at.
I did have to change our pyramid.
Yeah. It would be great to see
Good background would be
a
better.
revised diagram, and also like which are the should-dos that the community might be expecting that are not gonna be happening. So,
Yeah.
just kind of make everything look more clear.
And where does playground rehabilitation fall in here?
It doesn't, it falls into another project. Because we,
It's gonna drive another budget.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions or any comments? Yeah, thank you very much, Steve, for that, finish that whole presentation. It makes a difference.
It's interesting, we have the same conversations in our office.
All right, thank you very much. Move on to 10.1, board approval to join the Super USDA Foods Cooperative for Child Nutrition Services.
So this is an item that maybe we could have put onto consent, but as we are bringing on our new CNS director and we are moving on to next steps with our program, we are bringing this USDA Super Co-op. It is a cooperative that would allow us, by joining, to, in practice, assign commodities to the co-op and then take them from the co-op. And so by being part of this bigger group, our commodities go into the bigger group. It will allow, and it's something that Jamie has done in other districts, allows for us to get a greater access to minimize prices, costs. It also allows us to able to take or sweep from other districts, thereby cutting costs if they don't use it by a certain date. So there are ways where we can actually save some money and get the food that we need to be able to run the kitchen. So this will be for the next school year, and so we will be proposing to join the Super Co-op now, so we're prepared to be able to get the food we need to run the kitchen next year.
Cost is always a good thing. Is there a motion to approve this or is there any discussion?
Big ball, hit my ball. I make a motion to approve it.
All right.
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And motion to approve joining the Super USDA Foods Co-op for Child Nutrition Service passed. Moving on to 10.2, board review and approval of the 2022-23 first interim budget. Thank you again, President Long, members of the board, and Dr. Clerk. This evening, we are bringing the first interim budget to the board. Martin Pong, Director of Fiscal Service, and myself, as we share the first interim. Tonight, we will have Mark share about the adopted budget versus our first interim and revenue and expenditure variances. Mark will also share about our general fund summary, and then I will take the board through our multi-year projection and some items that we are looking ahead towards. So I can hand it over to Mark.
Thank you. Good evening, President Mock, members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. McClure. Tonight we have our first interim, so I'll be reviewing our adopted budget versus our first interim budget and what some of the changes have been on the revenue and expenditure side. And so on the revenue side, when we look at our adopted budget, we were at just under 71 million. We had some carryover funds in our federal revenue of 49,000. Budget adjustments of 7.4 million, bringing us to a first interim budget of 78.4 million. And if you'll notice on those budget adjustments, the majority are from the other state revenue. And that's because at the time of the adoption, we didn't have the full insight of the governor's budget. And so this is really reflecting the programs that the governor included in his budget. So when we look at the local control funding formula sources, we have an increase in our property taxes from about 5% up to 6.5% year over year. On the state revenue side, this is where we're looking at the governor's programs that were approved. There's 3 one-time funding sources. The first being the Learning and Recovery Block Grant, the second being the Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials Block Grant, and the third being the Kitchen Infrastructure and Training, or the KIT grant, to help with the implementation of universal meals. We also saw an increase in the Expanded Learning Opportunities Program, or the ELOP, which is providing our unduplicated students, mainly the free and reduced students, with extended learning opportunities over for after-school programs and during breaks. And then also there's a component for to help us offset some of our transportation funds. On the local revenue side, we had a higher allocation from the SELPA, and then we also budget all of our site donations as we receive them. And then finally, as Chris had mentioned earlier on another agenda item, we're having OKC continue vend our meals, and so that is at a higher cost from the budget adoption, and then also bring on the child nutrition director. So we're seeing some higher costs in the child nutrition for the year, and then also some repairs to the Sage Canyon School in regards to the 2-story building.
What is that cost difference?
So for the child nutrition, it's about $450,000 increase, and the transfers in are coming from Fund 17, the reserve that we have.
Is that going to be what the annual projection is? We're going to have a $450,000 cost difference in what we're going to reimburse from the state?
It's actually closer to about $800,000 because we already budgeted a $350,000 contribution. So this is coming from the Fund 17 reserve that we set aside for Pacific Sky, and because of the delay with the central kitchen opening, it's part of that cost.
Are you asking year over year?
Yeah.
So continuing?
No, not continuous, it's just this 1 year of implementation, because we have to transition with the central kitchen not being completed in time.
So how much are we receiving from I think it's state and federal funds?
Correct.
Right? How much are we receiving?
I don't have that number in front of me, but for this year only, with having to vend the meals, it's costing approximately $700,000.
I'd like to know how much we're receiving.
Ongoing, how much more would we have to spend above and beyond what we receive?
We have to spend above and beyond.
Right now, it's only one time that we have to spend this amount.
But in future years, or I think we're capped on, in future years, are we going to be digging into general fund budgets to pay for all the meals?
No, we're anticipating maybe a little in the first year, maybe 100,000, let's say at the most, but after that, the cafeteria fund should be fully solvent on its own. And then when we look at our expenditures at adoption, we were at just under 71 million. We had carryover fund allocation of 364,000, budget adjustments of 2.1 million. So we're at a first interim budget of 73.4 million. When we look at our expenditure variances, we have adjusted our salary and benefits for our expenditures through October 31st. We carried over funds from donations and school site improvement, and we also budgeted for the current year donations. Some of those programs that had increased fundings, the KIT and ELOP, we budgeted for some of the supplies for that program, and getting up the costs for universal meals, and some additional supplies for the after-school program. Up on the operation expenses, we have an increase for some of our ELOP services, such as our enrichment services that we're providing to the unduplicated students. And we're also experiencing higher utilities. So we'll be looking at our utilities and ways that we can save there. Although we did just get another notice that utilities are also going up January 1st again. So some of it's unavoidable. And then we also have a few capital outlay projects, so Sage Canyon, replacing the HVAC systems there, and also a fencing project there. And then the transfer out, transferring those funds from Fund 17 to the general fund, and then back to the cafeteria fund to support the deficit there. So when we look at our ending fund balance, the second line there, we can see a net increase to the general fund of about $5 million, and that's because we're receiving all of that one-time funds that we can spend over multiple years. So we can see that those funds on that restricted line, where it shows the $6.3 million in restricted funds that will carry over to future years. We still have our 15% minimum reserve, and then are also planning for our digital record solution. And we have a total unassigned or unrestricted reserve of 25%. When we look at it on the pie chart, we can see here, the state revenue is really a lot larger portion of our income for this year. Normally it's about 7%, and the LCFF sources is closer to the low 80s. So we can really see that the state funds coming in. So the total for the one-time sources is about $4.1 million. So it's a large amount that we'll be using over multiple years. And then when we look on our expenditure side, the total salary and benefits is a little lower than usual, just because we have so much more on the operations side because of those one-time funds, and also curriculum adoption. So that's kind of pushing the salary and benefit percentage a little bit lower than normal. And I'll let Chris take over for the multi-year projection.
Do you mind? So looking at our multi-year projection, here are some of the assumptions that we're using. We're obviously, as we always do, we're basing this on schoolservices.org. As we look out to the next couple of years, we are projecting 3% property tax increases in 23-24, 24-25. We also project a stepping column of 2% increase annually. And then finally, we have our annual adjustments in employer STRS and PERS contributions that are leveling off. We're seeing our STRS flatten at 19%, and PERS is flattening out at about 25%. That can adjust a little bit each year, but we were seeing those increases year over year, and we're seeing it flatten at this point. So hopefully we stay that way. As we look at our multi-year projection with our revenues and expenses, as Mark shared, we're seeing an increase in our one-time state funds in our current year, notably in our other state revenue. It's leading to larger revenues in the current years and then in our out years. And so as we look at our other state revenue, that will go down from the 11.7 million in our base year to 7.5 in the 2 out years. And then you'll see that our total revenues are higher this year as we have that larger increase in the one-time state funds. We also see larger transfers into the general fund and then out to Fund 13, as Mark was talking about, to support our universal meals. And then those are not at the same level as we get into the out years as well. And so that sort of shows you the larger amount that are going in some of those this year that we're using for transferring from Fund 17 to support especially the universal meals program. So we see ourselves with total revenues of $78.4 million this year, and moving to $74.8 and then $76.5 million. And then our expenditures at $73 million, then going to 72, almost $72.5 million, and then back up to about $73.9 million in our third out year. As we look at the multi-year projection for our ending fund balance, as Mark noted, we have that larger net increase in the funding balance in this first year, and that's relative to those restricted funds that we are seeing come in. And then you'll see the restricted funds are spent somewhat over the next couple of years, but we are also seeing a much smaller increase in the next 2 years because we are not expecting to see one-time funds like we have seen recently. When we look through the ending fund balance, we still are having the minimum reserve being met, the $250,000 for a digital record solution. That will come off when we move forward with one. It is a priority in the next couple of years to get a digital records solution and move forward with digitizing records, many of our records. And then we see our 3% reserve and then the unassigned and unappropriated that does increase somewhat associated with the amount that we're seeing as our net increase in 23-24 and 24-25. So you'll see that our ending fund balance of our unrestricted percentage is 25% this year, and then it would be projected to go up to 28% in 23-24, and then to 31% in 24-25. And then just looking ahead, we are always monitoring our enrollment projections and staffing needs. We'll continue to monitor that. We're looking towards the social science adoption and working with instructional services and the funding and procurement of that curriculum. We have a number of new programs implemented this year, and so we've been added into the first interim, and we're finalizing plans for these. Ms. Mark mentioned the Learning Recovery Block Grants, and then the Arts, Music, and Instructional Materials Block Grants. And those two block grants will help to fund things like math and ELA interventions, curriculum and materials, learning environments, and professional development. We have a transportation plan that we'll bring to the board in March, and that is prerequisite to get the offsetting for transportation funding. So there is a 60% of the prior year's transportation funding. So what we spend this year on our special ed and Mar Heights funds, 60% of that would go towards, we'd be able to get towards next year. So it will start to refund some, but it is less than what you get, and it's based on your prior year. As we look at, we'll also continue to proactively plan to address the end of those one-time funds. And that'll be coming in, approximately 4 years. And so the programs and people that we've been paying for with these funds that we know are priorities, and how we look at are those things that we need to look in the long term, do they need to be absorbed into the general fund? And so how does that funding look as we look out years when those one-time funds come to an end? And then when we look at Prop 28 that was passed, the supplemental funding for arts and music, that will provide our districts somewhere in the range of $400,000 to $450,000, and it will fund art and music instruction. And so we will be looking at how we implement that and how that supports the arts and music program as well. And then finally, looking at our Fund 17 Special Reserve, as you know, that was built to help support the opening of Pacific Sky School. And then we've also been using it because with Pacific Sky School came our brand new kitchen, and there have been costs that go with that. So looking at the Fund 17 Special Reserve, we will need to use some of those funds as we support the Fund 13 and Universal Meals, but there will be other funds left from it, and so how those maybe support our facilities program going forward. And so with that, we'd be happy to answer questions you might have.
Thank you very much, Chris. It looks very healthy, well managed, so appreciate that. Is there any questions? No, I don't think we have any questions. So do we need to do an approval for this? All right, so let's ask, is there a motion to approve the 2022-2023 first interim budget report?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Motion to approve the 2022-2023 first interim budget report passed.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we're on to our closing items. 12.1, board review reminder of upcoming DMUSD events. 12.2, board review reminder of upcoming district DMSCF and PTA events. And 12.3, preliminary items for the January 2023 regular board meeting. Anybody have anything? No. And 12.4, adjournment of the meeting. Call for a motion. Anybody want to adjourn?
I would adjourn.
All right. Now you can take the roll. I'll second it. Fantastic. All those in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion to adjourn, meeting is passed. Meeting is adjourned at 8:23 p.m. Oh, yes. Happy holidays, everyone. Actually, still starting with the previous months.